Hi, my name is Paul Edwards. I'm an independently published horror author, and first and foremost, a monster kid. You know, horror movies used to have wild names: The House That Dripped Blood, Shriek of the Mutilated, I Dismember Mama, and my personal favorite horror movie title, The Earth Dies Screaming. Then, about a generation ago, the trend to have these wild names completely changed. And it became all the rage to have your horror movie have a very understated, somber title like this: The Village, The Ring, The Boy. These are the most boring titles in the world, in my view. In the old days, you knew when you were seeing a horror movie just from the title of it. If you saw a movie called The Boy and you didn't know what it was about, I mean, that could be any genre of movie. You'd have no idea. If you see a movie called The House That Dripped Blood, you know what kind of a movie you're getting. And so when this Japanese horror film, Matango, from 1963, was released in the United States, it was given the kind of lurid title that was in vogue at the time: Attack of the Mushroom People. By today's standards, Attack of the Mushroom People is not an acceptable movie title. Back in the 60s, it was awesome. So by today's standards, you could say that this is a badly named horror film. But if that's the case, then it is the best badly named horror film ever. So the story begins on a yacht, and the passengers on this yacht are out for a day trip, but a storm has set them adrift at sea, and they don't know where they are, and they land on a seemingly deserted island. And listen to this: the crew, including the passengers here, are a millionaire, a professor, a skipper, a young man, and two young women, one of whom is a celebrity, the other of whom is a plain girl next door type. If you're anywhere near my age, all you can think of when you hear this is, where's Gilligan? Okay, it sounds a lot like the Gilligan's Island cast. I think that Sherwood Schwartz probably saw Attack of the Mushroom People in the theater and got his idea: what if I turn this terrifying, grim monster movie into a sitcom? All right, so this crew washes ashore, and they're stranded on this deserted island, or seemingly deserted island. And there's really not a lot to eat here. There are some berries growing, but they're bitter beyond the point of being able to be eaten. And all that seems to grow on this island is fungus. Lots and lots of fungus. And there are gigantic toadstools, like toadstools the size of a person. And it seems that anything that has spent any length of time on this island gets covered with this fungus. As they explore, getting more desperate all the time for food, they find that another ship has wrecked here at least several months, maybe a year beforehand. And the ship is in ruins. The sails are in tatters. The hull is covered with more of this strange fungus. And aboard the ship, there are some canned goods that our characters are able to eat. But strangely, all of the mirrors aboard the ship are shattered. And there's no sign of the passengers on this ship, living or dead. Their dead bodies are not here either. So whatever happened to them, it didn't seem to have happened aboard the ship. So as time passes, our characters get hungrier and hungrier out on this island. And they start to feel the temptation to eat the strange mushrooms that are growing everywhere. But something just tells them that this is not a good idea, which it clearly is not. Now, out in the jungle on this island, there's a lot of these large mushrooms. And as the characters are out among the mushrooms looking for things that could be eaten, like roots and so forth, they start to see and hear strange things. And at one point, a character could have sworn that he saw one of these gigantic mushrooms move. And another character thinks that he saw some furtive motion out in the jungle. And there's this strange, sort of a teetering, almost a laugh-like sound, very high-pitched, that every now and then is heard out in the jungle. Soon, the passengers on this ship start to notice that there's strange things happening aboard their ship at night. When they're going to sleep, it seems as if intruders might be coming aboard and sneaking around on the deck. And they catch a glimpse here, they hear a noise there, but they're not able to, confirm exactly who or what is coming aboard their ship. Meanwhile, the relationships between the people are getting worse and worse. And two of the men start fighting over the young woman who's a celebrity. She's a nightclub singer. And I should point out that just like Ginger and Marianne on Gilligan's Island, the two young women in this story, the one of whom is, this overtly sexual nightclub singer, and she's vain and conceited. And the quote unquote plain girl next door is the nice girl. And I'm sure, 99 men out of 100 watching this movie would prefer the nice girl next door, who's just as beautiful as the celebrity, but doesn't, take advantage of it. So anyway, the two men are fighting over the nightclub singer. Mimi is her character. And the nightclub singer, when she's alone with the quote-unquote plain girl, she rubs it into her. She's like, everybody wants me. So, not only is she beautiful, but, it's one thing to know you're beautiful. It's another thing to rub it into people who are considered less beautiful. So immediately, once you hear that, you have no more sympathy for this character. So as the story goes on, people are increasingly tempted to just give in and eat the mushrooms because they're so hungry on this island. And Mimi, the nightclub singer, goes out and has some of the mushrooms. And she, in effect, seduces one of the men to come out onto the island with her, and she's going to show him that eating the mushrooms is okay. And she is trying to tempt him to get him to eat the mushrooms, and succeeds in getting him to take some. And then she's like, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you. When you eat these mushrooms, you become one of them. They transform you. And the people who have eaten these mushrooms start to get fungal growths all over their face and all over their body, and eventually turn into a sort of a mushroom person. And these human-sized toadstools that we've been seeing throughout the picture get up and walk around because they were the crew of the first ship. And they are the mushroom people. And when you hear the title Attack of the Mushroom People, it sounds kind of silly. But when you're actually seeing the movie and seeing the terrible revelation of what has happened to the crew of the first ship, it is so creepy. It is just horrifying. So the few surviving members of the crew are trying to get away from this horrible, monstrous island. And, I won't spoil the ending for you, but it's the film overall maintains its grim, negative tone. So be aware of that. And one thing that I can't help thinking of is that when Mimi, the nightclub singer, is trying to tempt the man into eating the mushrooms without telling him the truth that eating it will be the death of him, well, the doom of him. It'll turn him into a mushroom person. All I can think of is Eve in the garden tempting Adam to eat the fruit, the forbidden fruit, which of course brings death of a form. So there's a pretty heavy image for a movie called Attack of the Mushroom People hidden in the story. So if you've never seen this film, you might want to look for it under the title Matango, because that's the title it's been released on in DVD here in America. But its original American title was Attack of the Mushroom People. Under one of those two titles, you can easily find it online. And it is an excellently produced film. It's a Toho film. This is the same movie company that made all those Godzilla movies, but this is a more serious film. It's very creepy. The music in it is very disturbing with these long creaking violin notes. The mood on the island is dripping with grim atmosphere. And once you start to realize just how evil these mushrooms are, the fact that you see their fungal growths all over the place gives you a feeling of claustrophobia. Even though you're outdoors on an island, you're surrounded by these things, and there's no hope of escape. And it is a chilling film that I definitely recommend if you are a fan of vintage horror and classic monsters. And if you are a fan of vintage horror and classic monsters, you might want to check out my book series on Amazon.com, the Mourner's Woods books. I've published 6 of them so far. There are different monsters in different books. Each story is self-contained. You can read them in any order. I sell them as cheap as Amazon will let me sell them. 99 cents for an ebook. Currently $9.99 for a paperback, although we've been told that may go up. But I sell them as cheap as Amazon will let me. And the Mourner's Woods books by Paul Edwards are available, and I'm sure if you're a monster kid like me, you will absolutely love them. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.